So it is now being recorded, as everybody heard. I am Dwight Hoster, co-chair of the SWEP Greater Philadelphia Programs Committee. We are here today to have a virtual lunch and learn about the legal and regulatory aspects of the updated New Jersey DEP groundwater quality standards. And the presenters are Natalia Teekah, Associate of Manco Gold Catcher Fox LLP, and John Oberer, LSRP of GZA Geo-Environmental Incorporate. Some housekeeping items. Thanks to everybody who came. Like I said earlier, this will be recorded and will be placed on our YouTube channel. Everybody will be muted for this event. And please hold your questions until the end of the presentation. Stop moving. I paused you. If you have a question, when we get to that section, please raise your hand or send it in the chat. Sorry about that. We have some great upcoming events. So please go to the swepweb.com for details. Oh my gosh, that is annoying. Sorry, guys, I am having technical difficulties with it just transitioning. So tomorrow we actually have our joint networking happy hour with New Jersey SWEP at Fringe Bar at 5 p.m. The next is a DEI committee lunch and learn redlining in Philadelphia, which is a Zoom event. There will be an orienteering and afterwards networking at Marsh Creek and the Stables on June 19th at 5 p.m. And then in July, we have a reoccurring networking night at the Reading Phillies. Some events to look out for are additional virtual and in-person lunch and learns, additional in-person social and technical networking events, a native trees tour at the Morris Arboretum and Garden in May. That date is still to be determined. The 2025 PFAS seminar at the PICO building, also in May, and that date is also to be determined. And then in July, we are planning to have our 2025 PA DEP update at the Cerro building in Norristown. That date is also to be determined. So keep your eyes open on the website for those, and keep a lookout for those emails rolling in. Some deadlines are coming up. So the 2025 grants application is due April 25th, and the 2025 scholarships application are due May 16th. And lastly, we are always searching for volunteers, especially on the programs committee. We try to do a lot of different programs for you guys, so any help is appreciated. And even on the day of events, you are more than welcome to volunteer. So if you have the urge to and you would like more information, please contact a board member or email info@swepweb.com. All right. So to begin, we have Natalia Teekah, and she will talk about the legal aspect of this topic. Natalia Teekah is an associate at Manco Gold Catcher and Fox. She advises clients on regulatory compliance, contaminated site remediation and redevelopment, wetland permitting, transactional due diligence, public water system regulation, and solid and hazardous waste matters with a focus on New Jersey law. She's a graduate of Emory University and Vermont Law School and worked as an environmental associate for other full-service law firms in New Jersey prior to her time with Manco and Gold.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, Dwight. So thank you to everyone for being here and spending your lunch hour with us. And especially thank you to Dwight and the SWEP team for organizing this today. So I am going to kind of walk through, if we could go to the next slide, please, Dwight. Just as kind of a brief overview of what I'm hoping to cover today, I would like to kind of go back to the beginning of these groundwater standards, maybe to help to add some color and some context to what can seem like a lot of acronyms and a lot of numbers. So hopefully this background can kind of enhance everyone's ability to do some issue spotting in your own work. We're going to review the substantive changes that have been made to the groundwater quality standards with promulgation of this new rule. And we will talk there briefly about impacts to discharge to groundwater permitting. And where we're going to spend most of our time today is on impacts to the site remediation program, kind of prompted by this rule. Next slide, please. So by way of brief background, the New Jersey Water Pollution Control Act is the act that gives DEP the ability to promulgate these new groundwater quality standards. So the kind of basic policy statement and the impetus behind this act is listed there for you on the screen, which is to restore, enhance, and maintain the chemical, physical, and biological integrity of the state's waters, to protect public health, safeguard fish and aquatic life, and to enhance the domestic, municipal, recreational, industrial, and other uses of water within the state. So this vests the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection with the ability to make these determinations as to what changes are needed to groundwater quality standards to achieve this end goal through regulation. And you'll see kind of that language repeat itself in the next slide under the regulations. If we could advance to the next slide, please. So the groundwater quality standards regulations are located at NJC 7:9C. And you'll see that language kind of echo the policy statement from the Act, which is to kind of enhance, maintain, restore the quality of New Jersey groundwater. So the regulations require that when existing groundwater quality doesn't meet constituent standards as determined under the regulations, due to human activities, typically is kind of the language under the regulations, DEP shall, after review of relevant and available scientific and technical data, determine what management actions are necessary to achieve this policy and this end goal. And kind of in the background here, it is helpful to understand that New Jersey has something called an anti-degradation policy, meaning that DEP has to protect existing groundwater quality that is either better than the groundwater criteria from significant degradation. So if we've got kind of an exceptional quality water, we can't backslide on that. We can't degrade that water quality. And DEP also cannot approve further degradation of groundwater quality where the background quality contravenes groundwater quality standards. So this is where you sort of see this implemented in practice is under the New Jersey pollutant discharge elimination system. We tend to call it NJDEP's permitting system. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with that. But DEP provides for individual or general permits or discharges to groundwater under the NJDEP system. Individual permits are going to be tailored more to specific conditions of a facility. These are applicable to facilities basically that are not eligible for general permits. And there are lists of those facilities and criteria there. But typically you'll see individual permits issued for things like sanitary wastewater, groundwater discharges, industrial wastewater, and managed aquifer recharge. And then general permits are those permits that kind of cover larger categories for similar types of discharges. So basin discharges at sanitary landfills, surface impoundments, potable water treatment plants. So those are more broad categories if you kind of fall into one of those. And there are a few more. These are just a few examples. But if you fall into one of those, typically you can proceed with applying for a general permit as opposed to an individual permit. In practice, you tend to kind of get those general permits a little bit more quickly because it's a standardized set of requirements. Individual permits, DEP will have to kind of go through and examine your specific facility, your specific discharges, and draft a permit that is tailored to that facility. If we could go to the next slide, please. So as you'll kind of recall from the policy and regulatory statement, New Jersey has the ability to designate certain classes of waters for the state. So there are 3 classes of groundwater, each have subclasses, but broadly speaking, they're class 1, class 2, and class 3 groundwater. Class 1 waters are those waters of special ecological significance, so waters of exceptional quality within the state. Think like pinelands here is what we're sort of talking about. So groundwater quality standards here are the natural quality for each constituent. These waters have to be either maintained or restored. So this is kind of a, it's a very protected class of waters that doesn't really allow for much in the way of discharge. Class 2 waters are all groundwater for potable water supply, and that's where we're going to be spending most of our time today. And then just kind of to round it out, class 3 waters are groundwater with uses other than potable water supply. These might not be considered potable due to kind of natural hydrogeological characteristics or natural water quality. These are certain formations in the state that are enumerated in the regs and kind of meet this definition. So if anyone's familiar, the Woodbury Formation, Merchantville, Navesink formations kind of fall under this class 3 water. So again, for purposes of today, we're really focused on class 2 potable waters, mainly class 2A waters, which is more or less all groundwater in the state. Again, to round it out, class 2B waters are groundwater in the state that needs some enhancement to become potable. So the groundwater standards we're talking about today apply to class 2A waters consist of 2 components, something called the practical quantitation level, or PQL, which is the lowest concentration of any one constituent that can be reliably achieved among laboratories, sort of within specified limits of precision and accuracy during routine laboratory operating conditions. So think of this as kind of a testing-based standard. What can labs actually measure with any kind of reliability? And this will kind of balance out the groundwater quality standards, because the other component is the groundwater quality criteria. These are designated levels or concentrations of constituents that, when they're exceeded, will prohibit or significantly impair a designated use of the water. These are typically health-based concentrations. So I will kind of briefly mention it here because it comes up later. Groundwater quality criteria can be specific, interim specific, or interim generic. And you can kind of think of that as phases in developing a final criteria, with kind of the first being an interim generic, proceeding all the way through to it becoming a specific water quality criteria. Next slide, please. So between these two, the PQL and the groundwater quality criteria, NJDEP will implement the higher or less stringent of these 2 standards. So I kind of mentioned that PQLs will balance out the groundwater quality standards. So there may be an extremely aggressive groundwater quality standard, but if labs can't measure that with any kind of reliability, just based on scientific limitations currently, which is the what would be reflected in the PQL, then the PQL concentration is kind of going to control, because that would be higher than the groundwater quality standard. Next slide, please. So finally, we get to the rule. The draft rule was promulgated in January of 2024, and then a little over a year later, in February of this year, the final rule was promulgated. There were some final rule corrections issued shortly after the final rule was promulgated. These are non-substantive changes, kind of drafting errors. So one of these updates chart notations for barium and toluene, and the other corrects what were kind of counting errors in the number of constituents that the final rule changes. So just kind of be aware of that, that's out there, but they are considered non-substantive, kind of more administrative changes. Next slide, please. So looking at what triggered this update, the update to PQLs and groundwater quality criterion are based on EPA methodologies and best available scientific information, EPA's method detection limits, laboratory data, and information from New Jersey laboratories were also reviewed in developing the new groundwater quality standards. Here you kind of have to remember that there's preemption in play. So federal regulations are going to be considered the floor, and states can't have provisions less stringent than the federal provisions. So when those are updated, New Jersey DEP is required to revise the state standards. Next slide, please. So in the final rule, there were changes to 72 constituents, 63 groundwater quality standards changed, 49 became more stringent, 12 became less stringent. And then I had briefly mentioned interim specific criteria here. So 2 new standards were added. They were previously interim specific criteria and were essentially finalized now as a standard specific criteria. And 9 constituents remained less than or equal to their PQLs. Next slide, please. I'll kind of just briefly touch on this because we will expand on this a bit later, but it's important to note that the groundwater quality standards for 7 constituents became more stringent by an order of magnitude. So you can see that there are kind of some meaningful reductions that took place here. And some of these are fairly common components that you'll see in sites that require remediation. I'm kind of looking at vinyl chloride specifically, and Kirby will touch on that a bit later, but I just wanted to kind of provide that chart. This table comes from the draft rule, if you're looking for it. Next slide, please. So what are the implications to discharge to groundwater permits? How does this affect kind of permitting at this phase? So in short, this affects permit limitations and what a facility is allowed to discharge into groundwater. So it's important to kind of keep the point of compliance in mind. So the point at which groundwater quality standards have to be met as measured at that point based on your permit. So I do just kind of want to point out that this could be different for different pollutants within the same permit. But essentially the new groundwater quality standards may require a level of treatment prior to discharge, depending on the pollutant concentration and how that's changed under these new standards. And of course, that represents an potentially increased cost. Next slide here. All right, so where we're going to spend basically the majority of this presentation from here on out is talking about implications to the site remediation program. The kind of applicable regulations are listed for you there at the top. 26C is administrative requirements for remediation of contaminated sites, or the ARCs. 726D is the Brownfield Act regulations, and 726E are technical requirements for site remediation. So the remediation standards will apply to all new cases, cases without approved remedial action work plans, and sites with contaminants that are changing by an order of magnitude. So again, this could potentially represent significant costs for sites subject to the order of magnitude provisions in particular. Next slide. So why? So under the Brownfield and Contaminated Site Remediation Act, New Jersey DEP cannot compel a person required for conducting remediation or PRCR to use a newly promulgated remediation standard at sites that already have approved remedial action work plans or other plans, or that have approved final remediation documents, so RAOs or NFAs, unless the new remediation standard differs from the approved standard by an order of magnitude. So for RAOs and NFAs, final remediation documents, the difference between the new remediation standard and the concentration of a contaminant at the site must also differ by an order of magnitude. But essentially what this is doing is it potentially triggers a reopener for sites that were formerly considered closed. So that is certainly something to kind of be aware of. And I think I will, at this point, turn it over to Kirby to tell you a little bit more about that.
Before we get to Kirby, we do ask for a poll question. So those who had registered for certification purposes, and we ask everybody, I am about to launch the first poll. So if you can please answer. All right. So the answer was 9. All right. Now let's pull up John's slides. Thank you, Natalia, for your very insightful legal perspective in this New Jersey DEP update. So our next presenter is John Oberer of GZA. Oh, where'd my notes go? Too many things on my screen. John Oberer is a senior vice president and principal at GZA for over 30 years of experience, 29 years at GZA in environmental investigation and remediation. Mr. Oberer also serves as the district office manager for GZA's metropolitan Philadelphia area offices and has served as a trainer for GZA's project management training program. He attended Carnegie Mellon University, where he received a bachelor's in science and chemistry with a toxicology minor. John is a founding member of the New Jersey Licensed Site Remediation Professionals Association, has held every executive office on its board of trustees. In 2018, South Jersey Biz Magazine named John one of its top executives of the year. He has served on several New Jersey DEP committees, developing guidance for implementation of the LSRP program. John has also published several articles on New Jersey LSRP program. All right. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Dwight. And thank you, Natalia, too. That was a great lead up to my little talk here. Dwight, if you could hit the next slide, that'd be great. So a little overview for what we're going to talk about today. Next. Just hit click. I'm going to talk about the affected compounds by the new standards and the phase-in period for that. There's some specific rules that apply to that. I'm going to talk about the groundwater quality standards that have been lowered by an order of magnitude a little bit. Then when do we apply the order of magnitude analysis and how do we do it? And the effects on the migration to groundwater soil remediation standards. Next slide. As as Natalia said, there's 63 compounds with new standards. You can keep clicking, Dwight. 28 of them are VOCs, 19 are semi-volatiles, 10 are pesticides or herbicides. There's 4 inorganics, total PCBs, and 1 PFAS compound. And about 50 of the standards went down and about a dozen or so went up. So that means 50 of them are more stringent and a dozen or so are less stringent. Next slide. Some of the common drivers to most of our sites that are affected by this, benzene and ethyl benzene, which are, constituents of gasoline, chlorinated solvents, PCE, TCE, cis-1,2 dichloroethylene and vinyl chloride. They're commonly found in dry cleaning establishments, metal degreasing, and things like that. The PCE and TCE are typically the primary discharge contaminants, with DCE and vinyl chloride being the breakdown products that we would see. Methyl ethyl ketone, which is also known as 2-butanone. That's another industrial solvent that's used in paints, coatings, adhesives, plastics. Other chlorinated solvents like the trichloroethanes, which are lighter chlorinated solvents. The chlorobenzenes, which are used in solvents and as a pesticide precursor, a precursor in pesticide manufacturing. 7 PAHs. PAHs are found in your heavier petroleum products and your coal products and any products of coal combustion, like a coal gasification plant. And then, of course, the 1 PFAS compound that had a significant change was PFNA. Next slide. Now, the phase-in period, there's a whole document on this, and you can find that on the DEP website. I'll give you a link to that at the end of my presentation here. And this phase-in applies to each compound individually. So you look at each compound and determine whether you have to apply the order of magnitude rule. You can click, there you go. So you can use the old standards provided 4 conditions are met. One is that the prior standard is not equal to or greater than 10 times the new standard, hence the order of magnitude statement. That you have a RAWP submitted to the DEP prior to August 3rd of this year. And that RAWP has to be approved by the department or certified by an LSRP. And finally, you have to complete the remedial action within the applicable regulatory timeframe. So you have an approved work plan, but you have to get it all done and implemented before your regulatory timeframe. One note is that when you apply for an extension from your mandatory timeframe, your regulatory timeframe automatically moves to the mandatory timeframe. So if you've gotten an extension because you were going to miss your regulatory timeframe, not to worry. Your new regulatory timeframe is your extended timeframe. Some compounds that have actually the 7 compounds that have decreased by an order of magnitude or more. There's 2 volatiles, 1,3-dichlorobenzene and vinyl chloride. Vinyl chloride actually had a pretty significant decrease, and this is going to cause some heartache for some folks, as you'll see later on in the presentation. The SVOC, semi-volatile organic 1,1-biphenyl, also decreased by an order of magnitude. 2 inorganics, cobalt and free cyanide, decreased by an order of magnitude, and a couple of pesticides and herbicides in the pesticide herbicide category, heptachloroepoxide and methoxychlor. So when do you do an order of magnitude analysis? If you have a site with a remedial action permit, then you do your order of magnitude analysis at the next biennial certification. So your remedial action permit specifies that you have to do some periodic monitoring and inspections and things like that, and file a certification of the protectiveness of your remedial action every 2 years. When you do that certification, that's when you do your order of magnitude analysis. Next click. For sites with an unrestricted use remedial action, that means you've cleaned up to the residential standards. At the next triggering event, you will conduct your order of magnitude analysis. In other words, if you trigger ISRA somewhere down the road for any reason, then your PA, your preliminary assessment, has to include an order of magnitude evaluation. And if you're in the process of conducting remediation, and remember, New Jersey defines remediation as beginning at site investigation. So anything from site investigation up to remedial action is considered by the state to be remediation. So if you have a work plan approved by the department or certified by your LSRP, and the remediation standard decreases by an order of magnitude, then of course you're subject to the phase-in period. And remember, as I just said, that phase-in period is that you have to have your certified or approved work plan into the department by August 3rd of this year, and your RA has to be completed by the regulatory time frame. We'll go back a little. Go back one, Dwight. If your RAW is not approved or certified, or it's not submitted before August 3rd, then all the remediation standard changes will apply. You cannot be grandfathered in for any of the other changes. Okay. Next. So what is an order of magnitude analysis? During a preliminary assessment, your PA, as I mentioned, has to have an evaluation to determine if there is an order of magnitude. Now, pay close attention to this. An order of magnitude difference between the concentrations of the contaminants in any of your AOCs and the applicable remediation standard at the time. So once these standards go into effect, you don't care so much about what the standard was compared to the previous standard. You have to compare it to the concentrations on your site. If an order of magnitude difference does exist, then you have to evaluate whether your remedy is still protective and decide whether you have to do additional remediation if it's not protective. If you're in the process of implementing your remedial action, you have to ensure that your remedial action complies with all the applicable remediation standards. If, as I mentioned, if a numeric standard decreases by an order of magnitude prior to issuance of a final remediation document, the person responsible for conducting the remediation must, and I say PRCR because that's what the rule says, because this is from ARCS, but the PRCR has to pay their LSRP to do this analysis and make sure that you don't have to do additional remediation to comply with the revised standard. Okay, here's my poll question. An order of magnitude is not required for sites remediated to a restricted use standard. True or false? How's the poll doing, Dwight?
We're almost there.
Okay. Most of you got it correct. The answer was false. Very good. Okay, next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about the soil remediation standards. Yes, I know we're supposed to be talking about groundwater, but in New Jersey, the migration to groundwater soil remediation standards are designed to protect groundwater from contamination in soils. And so toward that end, the soil remediation standards for the migration to groundwater are derived from the groundwater quality standards. So this means that, you know, for a bunch of compounds where the standards have decreased, that means that your migration to groundwater soil remediation standard will also decrease. Now, you'll notice that there's two things here where the current migration to groundwater standard is shaded in yellow. That's because that current migration to groundwater standard actually doesn't exist because it's higher than the saturation concentration for that compound. However, because of the decrease in the groundwater quality standard, you can see for 1,1-biphenyl, for example, it went from 400 to 5. That means that our proposed new migration to groundwater standard is now 1. So that means that for 1,1-biphenyl and methoxychlor, we now have migration to groundwater standards where we did not in the past. And you'll also notice that for vinyl chloride, because that groundwater quality standard went from 1 to, get this, 0.035, that's almost 2 orders of magnitude. If you remember, the soil remediation standards are the higher of the health-based standard and the reporting limit. So in this case, it defaults to the reporting limit, which is 0.0050. With the otherwise that standard would be 0.00023, which is we can't see that in the lab. So you see our factors of reduction range from 1.3 to 120, which is pretty significant. Next slide. Here's some other migration to groundwater standards that are going to be affected by this new rule. You'll see that many of them default to the soil reporting limit because the proposed migration to groundwater standard is so low. Amongst them are benzene, PCE and TCE, vinyl chloride, and several others. So be aware of this. The department has not yet posted these new migration to standards, but some of my colleagues were kind enough to go ahead and calculate these. So here they are for you to have an advance notice on. Next slide. So if you want more information, I'm sure, Dwight, are you going to circulate these slide presentations to the group?
I can, if people would like me to.
I mean, I'm fine if you circulate mine. There's 3 links here. One is to the rule adoption page on the department's website. One is a link to the order of magnitude phase-in guidance. And then you can also find all the environmental standards at that last link. Next slide. So that's all I have to say about this for today. I'm happy to take any questions. And thank you, everyone, for having me talk with you. And I appreciate your time.
So at this moment, we will do questions for both John and Natalia. So feel free to either unmute yourself, raise your hand, please, and we will go in that order, or you can write it in the chat and we will, I can moderate that for whoever you would like to ask a question to. All right.
Wow, Natalia, we must have told everybody everything they needed.
We just got a chat question.
Okay.
Beth Hyde asked, how are the standards set and the toxicological, my goodness, testing and analysis?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a complicated process that I'm not really that educated in. So there are basis and background documents for all the standards on the department's website, so you can look up in those basis and background documents how each of the classes of standards is calculated. I hope that helps, Beth.
We have Mina who has a question. So,
hello, everyone. My name is Mina Salman, project manager here at Tectonic Engineering. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I have a question. You indicated on your slide that the groundwater quality standards for 9 constituents remain less or equal to the practical quantitation limit, BQL. My understanding is the BQL is the lowest concentration that can be reliably achieved by testing laboratories. So if it's below the BQL, how it's going to be reliable though?
Well,
Do we
the
more
standard
stringent?
the standard that they use is the higher of the PQL or the groundwater quality standard, so that if your PQL is higher than your groundwater quality criteria, then they default to the PQL.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
we have another chat question from Sonia Ward of Tetra Tech. Any comments on the new proposal that came out yesterday?
I haven't had a chance to review it, Sonia.
I haven't
don't know if
either.
Natalia-
That's why I asked. I haven't either. I just thought maybe I'd get a little bit of a free read through. Yeah, I heard that the one thing I did hear is that the TGM, I'm not not the TGM, wrong state. The the table 2-1, there I heard that it says in there they're adding PFAS.
That's not surprising.
Nope. But I think it's a good thing to know about.
Yeah, agreed.
Sonia, this is Erin, and John, definitely read it because the proposal is in contrast to what the fact sheet says. So they're only telling you for an unknown site that you have to care about 4 PFAS, and it's like you have to look for OA, NA, whatever, Gen X, but it doesn't address the issue in the fact sheet that says you're going to be running the full list of 1633. So it continues to put us in the conundrum. It also is doing the same thing for dioxin with the one congener of dioxin that they're regulating versus the 16 others that show up in the method. So that's going to be the part of the amendment that's going to be sticky for us.
Really good comment. Thank you.
Another chat question from David Morse. If one locks in the old groundwater quality standard in a RAW, how long does the deferral period apply to a specific date or event?
It'll apply to your next triggering event, which if it's an unrestricted use, if it's a restricted use remedial action, then first biennial certification will be your trigger. If it's an unrestricted use remedial action, then it would just be your next triggering event, like ISRA, like if there's a transfer of the ownership or closing of the facility or whatever.
Nothing's wrong in the chat. Does anybody else have a question for Natalia or John? Well, I don't know if I'm hearing just mouse clicks or crickets.
It might have been mouse clicks.
here comes one from, will SPLP calculator be updated since they have finalized the leachate criterion for PFNA, PFOS, and PFOA?
I presume it will be, but I haven't heard one way or the other. I don't know if Natalia has any inside info on that.
I do not know.
All right, well, I don't see anything coming in. I will give another like 20 seconds just in case. But I, at this time, would like to thank both you, Natalia, and John for taking the time today to do this Lunch and Learn presentation for us and giving us some very excellent insight to the update. I'm hoping that a lot of people found it very insightful and will help them along with their projects. Other than that, I only ask that if people have any ideas for future virtual lunch and learns, whether it is, you know, a come back to this topic or something else, please feel free to reach out to me or the programs committee or somebody on the SWEP board, and we will try to make stuff like this happen more often.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, have a great day, guys.
Great meeting. Thank you.
Bye.